After racking his brain for excuses about his last disappearance, Peter finally works up the nerve to call Gwen and meets up with her. Walking with Peter, Gwen expresses her relief that he called, admitting she'd become paranoid about his vanishing act. Peter responds that he wishes he could say where he was, but he just can't. As they enter Gwen's home, Gwen accepts Peter's claim and promises not to pry, as she is just content to have him back. But a phone call from the Bugle interrupts, offering Peter a lucrative assignment in the distant Savage Land. Excited by the opportunity, Peter tells Gwen, but she is upset by the news. She questions how Peter could possibly say yes, especially given his recent absence. And then, she starts to cry. Seeing this, Peter can't bear it and drags her to the Bugle. When they meet with Jonah, he wants Gwen to join the expedition to bring a woman's angle to the story. In response, Peter voices his reservations about her going, but Gwen retorts that it's a male chauvinist pig thing to say. Then she agrees to go, admitting that she could use the money. Traveling to the Savage Land, the crew almost has a disaster when they run into a pterodactyl, but they eventually arrive. After landing, Jonah tells Gwen to get into her outfit, and as Peter questions what he means, Gwen tells Peter she saved it for a surprise. Upon returning in a bikini, Gwen asks how she looks, explaining it's for photos to be included in the news story. Then, Peter starts snapping photos of Gwen, but says he wants her back in the copter afterward where it's safe. In objection, Gwen tells Peter to stop trying to protect her. While they argue, they are interrupted by Jonah, who calls them over to see a huge, ancient statue. Jonah then hits a gong located in the center of the statue, which summons savages, putting the crew in immediate danger. As the crew is backed into a corner, the huge alien creature Gog suddenly appears and reaches out for Gwen, grabbing her. In a panic, Peter tries to stop Gog, but it swats him away and makes its escape in the forest. As Peter starts his frantic search for Gwen, Gog takes her to his master, Craven the Hunter, who reveals he is carving out his kingdom in the Savage Land, and with it, he needs a queen. While Gwen stalls for time by getting Craven to talk, Spider-Man teams up with Khazar. Continuing his search for Gwen, Spider-Man runs into Gog, and as the creature stirs, Craven is alerted. But Khazar attacks Craven before he realizes what is going on and battles him, leaving Gwen to watch, perched on a large stone. Khazar finishes his brawl and returns to Gwen to rescue her. Then, he carries Gwen through the forest, as she questions if Peter is okay. Khazar can't say for sure, but he is able to bring Gwen back to the Bugle crew where Jonah cheers Gwen's return. As Jonah hugs Gwen, she worries about Peter, asking where he is, just as a figure in the distance swings overhead. Shortly after, Peter calls the crew to tell them he's okay, and Gwen cheers his return, giving him a hug. In response, Peter claims he'd go through everything all over again to receive another welcome such as that. After returning home from the Savage Land, Peter and Gwen attend a party celebrating Harry's homecoming from the hospital. As a surprise, Flash makes an appearance, recently back from the war. Then, he engages in conversation with Gwen, while Mary Jane seizes the opportunity to flirt with Peter. Sometime later, Peter meets up with Gwen alone, complimenting her appearance. As Gwen playfully responds to his flirtation, Peter asks where they should go that evening, and Gwen suggests they visit Flash. On their way to his place, Peter questions Gwen's plan, reminding her it's supposed to be their date. As they arrive, Gwen explains they have their whole lifetime ahead, but she's worried about Flash. After Flash answers the door, Gwen asks if there's anything they can do for him. He's unsure, admitting he's just trying to get used to being a civilian again. But as Peter inquires further, Flash becomes upset, feeling like a spectacle in front of his guests, so Peter suggests they leave. While out on their date, the topic of Flash keeps resurfacing until Peter finally asks why Gwen is so interested in him. Gwen, however, insists she's only worried about him as a friend, questioning if Peter shouldn't be too. A pang of guilt strikes Peter, who then tells Gwen she has a beautiful soul, and they share a kiss. However, Peter soon gets in a perilous situation as Spider-Man against the villain, Spencer Smythe. Meanwhile, Gwen walks the college campus, and after talking to Randy and his friends about Jonah appearing in the latest front-page news, she asks if any of them have seen Peter. But none of them have, so Gwen wanders off, worried about where Peter is, and hoping someone like Mary Jane didn't find him first. Suddenly, Flash appears, apologizing for his attitude the other day, but Gwen says it's okay, they're friends. Then, Flash tries to express his feelings for Gwen, but she stops him and tells him that her feelings for Peter are real. She then confronts him with the fact that that is not the only thing bothering him, but Flash declines to talk about it. After Spider-Man escapes Smythe, he spots Gwen walking with Flash, and then sees two military men escort Flash away, leaving Gwen in tears. After following Flash and meeting with him, Spider-Man learns he is under military protection from some strange men who are after him from an incident in the war. Then, after Peter returns home, Gwen shows up and tells Peter about Flash being in military custody, so Peter agrees to accompany her to see Flash. On the way there, Gwen comments that she worries for Peter as his aunt does, which makes Peter feel paranoid about why she worries. But the thought is interrupted when he spots one of Flash's pursuers in the lobby. As an excuse to investigate, Peter tells Gwen that he has to make a phone call. But a bomb goes off before Peter can change clothes, and when Peter tries to go after the men, Gwen stops him. She tells Peter that everyone thinks that he is a coward, and she begs him to stay this time if he loves her, saying they'll face things together. Peter is left in a bind. He can't break away without Gwen thinking he is gutless. As Peter stalls for time, Gwen tells him that she's glad he stayed, because everyone thought he was a coward when he always ducked out when trouble broke loose. However, Peter still gets an idea on how to slip away, making it appear as though he's been kidnapped by Spider-Man. Seeing this, Gwen blames herself for Peter's abduction, thinking if she had not asked Peter to stay, this would not have happened. Heading to Harry's apartment, a desperate Gwen arrives and tells him that Peter has been kidnapped by the masked murderer, Spider-Man. When Aunt May enters the room asking what happened to her boy, Gwen lashes out at her in anger, repeatedly yelling at May that Peter is a man, not a boy. Seeing May in shock, Gwen then apologizes, but May says it's okay and comforts Gwen as she ponders her words. Meanwhile, Spider-Man has saved Flash, who is excited to tell their story to Gwen. This brings up Peter's old fears that Flash is trying to steal away his girl, and considering Gwen's hatred of Spider-Man, he wonders how he is supposed to compete. Enraged by the thought of losing Gwen to Flash, Peter takes out his frustration on a nearby chimney. Later, after changing clothes, he returns home, where Gwen greets him with a hug, saying how she was worried. However, when Aunt May starts to question Peter's bruises, Gwen fusses at her that she promised to stop treating Peter like a child, causing May to stop and walk away, with a pang of guilt over her. As Peter worries about May, Gwen explains it's her fault, and she told May to stop coddling him, but Peter is too weary from his last battle and passes out in Gwen's arms. Blaming it on the strain of Peter's encounter with Spider-Man, Gwen sets Peter down, saying she loves him, and it breaks her heart to see him in such a state. When Flash arrives, Gwen explains what happened and then defends Peter when Flash calls him a clown, saying she can't stand to hear it when people put him down. Peter briefly wakes up only in time to see Gwen leave with Flash. He assumes the worst before dropping back to sleep, where he has a nightmare over his fears of losing Gwen and hurting his aunt. The next day, after getting back in action as Spider-Man, Peter goes to see Aunt May, recalling how Gwen believed that she had hurt May's feelings. He finds a note from his aunt stating she's going away for a while, and instantly blames himself. Peter frantically searches the city for her, but his efforts are in vain. Later, Peter receives a call, expecting it to be May, but it's Gwen, inquiring about his absence from class. Upon hearing the news of Aunt May's departure, Gwen blames herself for it, recounting how her criticisms must have hurt May's feelings. But Peter tries to tell Gwen not to blame herself and ends the call, reflecting on how he understands her feelings of guilt. While Peter is out as Spider-Man, continuing his desperate search for Aunt May, Flash calls out to him during a walk with Gwen, but Peter doesn't see them. Gwen remarks that it's just as well, as she doesn't think she could have faced him. Not just because he killed her father, but also due to Peter's recent abduction, which she blames herself for. In this way, Spider-Man is a stark reminder of how she inadvertently hurt Peter. In response, Flash again ridicules Peter, but Gwen reminds him that she told him to stop, as she cares for Peter. Flash concedes that Peter is alright, but he'll never be Spider-Man. After his next battle with Dr. Octopus, Peter returns home experiencing severe stomach cramps and passes out. Soon, Gwen wakes him, having already called the doctor to examine him. The doctor diagnoses Peter with nervous exhaustion as the cause of his problems and calls Gwen aside. He instructs her to watch over Peter and ensure he avoids strong or spicy foods, suspecting an ulcer. Peter sits there bewildered as the doctor prescribes medication from the hall. While Spider-Man is out battling villains and tracking down his aunt, Gwen walks alone on campus. Professor Warren approaches her, immediately confirming Gwen's worry that it's about Peter and telling her that he's been missing class almost all week. Warren then asks if the rumor about Aunt May's disappearance is true. Confirming it is, Gwen blames herself, secretly hoping Peter can forgive her. Just then, Flash arrives and calls Gwen over, making fun of the news about Peter's ulcer. Infuriated by his comments, Gwen snaps at him, saying that unlike Peter, Flash acts like a child and should learn to keep his promises, reminding him she told him not to mock Peter. Later at the Bugle, Gwen arrives, trying to find Peter, as she is worried about him. She explains how she feels that Aunt May's disappearance is all her fault, since it happened after she told May that she treated Peter like a child. After talking to the Bugle staff, Gwen gets a lead to Aunt May's whereabouts, and then she, Robbie, and Ned head to an address in Westchester. Upon their arrival at the residence, gunshots echo from inside, prompting Robbie to call the police. Meanwhile, Spider-Man has battled Dr. Octopus inside the home and found Aunt May, and as the police arrive, they round up all the crooks. When Gwen sees Aunt May, she hugs her tightly, apologizing for the harsh things she said. May, however, admits they were true and that she's been a silly old fool. But the conversation is interrupted when Dr. Octopus exits and speaks to Peter's aunt in private, while Gwen suddenly fears something awful has happened to Peter. Changing into his civilian clothes, Peter meets with his aunt, but she tells Peter a shocking blow. She's not coming home. She tells Peter he's a grown man who can make his own decisions and reveals she's decided to stay and keep watch over Dr. Octopus's home, as per his request. Peter is stunned by his aunt's decision, and an emotional Gwen watches Peter with a pained expression as he tries to digest everything that's just happened.